Labor Committee will now come to order. Welcome everyone this afternoon. First on our agenda is Senate File 61, and our lead author of that bill, Senator Kunesh, is with us. Welcome, Senator Kunesh.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we look forward to hearing your bill. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Before we start, I do have an amendment, the A1 amendment.
Very good. Thank you. Members, Senator Kunesh has an author's amendment.
And it just cleans up some of the language in the bill and just puts it in the order that we'd like it to be.
Okay, thank you, Senator Kunesh. This is the A1 amendment to Senate File 61. Members, do we have a motion to move the author's amendment? Thank you. Senator Liskey moves the adoption of the A1 amendment to Senate File 61. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The A1 amendment is adopted. Senator Kunesh.
Thank you. Members, this Senate File 61 merely updates and addresses 3 statutes that have been neglected for quite a long time. It provides protections to agriculture and food processing workers. And as I said, these statutes have not been updated anytime recently. The migrant labor law was enacted in 1981, and none of its provisions have ever been updated. The most recent update to the recruitment in food processing employment law that was enacted in 1995, that has never been updated. And the packing house workers' right Bill of Rights law, that too was enacted in 2007 and has not been updated. So currently the migrant labor law provides recruited migrant cannery workers that they have the right to a written employment statement in English and Spanish at the time of their recruitment, but no other language for other language speakers. They are allowed a biweekly 70-hour pay guarantee for minimum period of employment. They need to be paid at least bi-weekly, and their final pay needs to be submitted within 3 days of termination, and then housing if provided by the employer until the receipt of that final time. So we need to go around, get to some of these things to get them updated. This bill, Senate File 61, is going to make changes to labor standards that address the packing house workers' bills of rights, protections for migrant workers, and worker protection in food processing employment. And those changes include requiring that all workers receive information regarding their employer's workers' compensation carrier, and requiring that workers receive information about the terms of their employment in their preferred language. And as I said, historically it's only been in English and Spanish, and we know many of these migrants, the migrants that we have working in our in these areas are now speaking languages other than English and Spanish, and they certainly should be informed in the language that they best understand. In addition, employers of 2 or more migrant workers are subject to additional requirements that previously only applied to employers of 30 or more migrant workers. And this bill will at the end create a new right of civil action for workers harmed by violations in the Packing House Workers Bill of Rights, and will expand the Packing House Bill of Rights to include poultry processing. It also will increase penalties allowed for violations of worker protections related to food processing employments. That is basically what the bill will do, enhancing and protecting those workers that do some of the, hardest work that our working force has here in Minnesota. And I know we do have a number of testifiers here that can explain things in more detail. I don't know if you want us to go through section by section, but at this time, I would like to allow our testifiers to join us.
Very good. Thank you very much, Senator Kunesh. We'll go ahead then and we'll proceed to the testifiers, and then we'll open it up to discussion and any questions for you or the testifiers or the department too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. First, on our list of testifiers, we have Jessica Gross, of the Director of Labor Standards and Apprenticeship with the Department of Labor and Industry. Welcome, Ms. Gross.
Thank you. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Jessica Gross, and I am the Director of Labor Standards and Apprenticeship at the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate File 61. This legislation reflects one of the recommendations made by the Agricultural Worker Wellness Committee to the governor in a written report on December 1st of 2021. The committee was established via Executive Order 2114. Its membership includes worker and community representatives, state agency representatives, including individuals from the Department of Agriculture, Department of Labor and Industry, Department of Health, and the Department of Employment and Economic Development, as well as employer representatives from the Minnesota Farm Bureau, Minnesota Farmers Union, and Minnesota Agri-Growth Council. The committee is supported by state agency representatives. I am part of the state agency support staff team to the committee, and I also represent DLI on the committee. Recommendations to the governor were discussed and developed over approximately 17 meetings between April and November of 2021, and the recommendation related to this bill was approved unanimously by the committee members who were present for the November 22nd, 2021 meeting. In subsequent meetings, committee members have expressed ongoing support of this recommendation. Senate File 61 updates and expands 3 worker protection laws that currently exist in Minnesota. One of these laws, the Migrant Labor Law, was enacted in 1981, and its most recent update took place in 2005. Many of its provisions have never been updated. A second law, the Recruitment and Food Processing Employment Law, was enacted in 1995 and has never been updated. And similarly, the third law, the Packing House Worker Bill of Rights, has never been updated and was enacted in 2007. This legislation updates these laws by adjusting for inflation, the potential penalties, damages, or fines for violations of these laws. It expands the workers protected under all 3 laws, and it also provides clarity regarding how these laws relate to other employment-related responsibilities under Minnesota law. The legislation also does the following. In relation to the Migrant Labor Law, it expands the scope of workers covered under the law to include all recruited migrant agricultural workers. It requires that the written employment statement provided at recruitment be provided in a worker's preferred language. It expands the scope of the information that must be provided in the written employment statement to include information regarding an employer's workers' compensation insurance. It requires that employers maintain this written employment statement for a period of 3 years, and it provides DLI with enforcement authority so that it can issue compliance orders and penalties for violations of this law. In relation to the Recruitment and Food Processing Employment Law, it expands the scope of food processing workers that are covered under the law to include those who relocate from within Minnesota to perform food processing employment. And it requires that the written disclosure provided at recruitment be provided in a worker's preferred language. Finally, in relation to the Packing House Worker Bill of Rights, it expands the scope of workers protected under the law to include those who perform poultry processing work. It requires that the explanation to workers be provided both in writing and in person. It requires that the explanation be provided to workers at the start of employment. It expands the scope of information required in the explanation to include information regarding an employer's workers' compensation insurance and the right to workers' compensation insurance coverage. And it provides for a private right of action, as well as authority for DLI to take action to address violations of the law. The proposed amendments and additions to these 3 current worker protection laws in Minnesota would help a greater number of agricultural and food processing workers to be fully informed of the terms and conditions of their employment and their workplace rights, and would also help employers of these workers to be better informed regarding how their responsibilities under these 3 laws relate to other responsibilities they have as employers in Minnesota. Thank you, Chair and Committee, for your time and consideration of this legislation.
Thank you, Ms. Gross, for your testimony. Next, we have Mr. Bernie Hess with UFCW Local 1189. Welcome to the Senate Labor Committee, Mr. Hess. Look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for hearing this bill. Also, thanks to the Senator for carrying it. I'm Bernie Hess. I'm with the Food and Commercial Workers Union, 1189. We're a amalgamated local. We represent people in food processing, meat packing, retail. We have some wholesale operations, long-term care, light manufacturing. We also represent the workers in the medical cannabis industry. We'd ask your support for Senate File 61. It's badly needed to put some teeth in. The last few years have shown us that we need to give a voice to workers. We need to help educate workers. We can do better. And I'll just go through like 5 quick points to why. Many of the folks are newly arrived. And in some plants, we have as many as 30 to 35 different languages being used. So these are not the plants that I grew up with. Back then, we might have had 1 or 2 different languages. They're very diverse. When you're working in a plant, you're exposed to many pathogens. We also can remember the whole issue with COVID. Automation today is unreal. When I tell some of the old timers that I know that are still around from Armour and Morels and Cudahy that they're knocking down 1,100 hogs an hour down in Worthington, they think I'm making up these stories. I always look at worker safety as food safety. The better workers are informed, the better they're trained, the more safe our whole system will be in regards to food safety. You know, and this is everything as simple as a worker just knowing what his rights are for taking a bathroom break, and that's a big issue in packing plants. Another thing that's emerged in the last several years is temp agencies being used to supply workers for some of the meat packing plants and food processing plants. Often, workers aren't really aware of who's paying them, how they're being paid. We've had instances where workers will get a card to withdraw their pay, which is okay, but then they're not told there's like $1.50 a time they pull money out of the money machine. Workers need to know their rights, and they need to know that they can organize or not organize, but they also need to know workers' comp. I've been doing a little digging around, and when we had COVID, I have yet to find a worker who actually was able to access worker comp to cover for their COVID. We can do better as a state. Unemployment insurance, plants close at times. It depends on, if a packer can get a supply of animals to process or not. So plants close, often workers, especially if their immigration status is shaky, they don't know what they're entitled to. And we need to do better on that. Finally, OSHA, I think we have a very good system in place, though I'd like to see some other things kicked up in regards to enforcement and consequences at times, but they need to know they need to know the chemicals they're working with. They need to know just procedures in that. I mean, if you work in meat packing, you can get cut, I've seen amputations over the years. There's slips, trips, and falls. There's hearing loss. You can get burnt. There's chemicals. There's carpal tunnel. There's shocks, and there's exposure to all sorts of things. So these are hard jobs. Somebody has to do it, but somebody should have. Workers have the right to know. So thank you. I hope you consider it. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Hess. With that, we will go ahead and move to member discussion or questions. Are there any questions or discussion from our members? Yes, Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I missed the name of the gal that presented. I have a couple questions, but maybe Senator Kunesh can answer them too, so I'm not sure if she's still here or...
I believe that Ms. Gross, yeah, with the Department of Labor and Industry. Thank you for rejoining us, Ms. Gross. Go ahead, Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Gross, I was trying to, they said there was, or you had mentioned there was a Governor's Committee on Safety and Health and Well-Being of Agriculture and Food Processing. There was a vote or something. You kind of did a great job. I just missed it. So could you tell us that again, please?
Thank you, Senator Dornick. Ms. Gross.
Thank you for your question. Yes, through executive order, the governor created the Agricultural Worker Wellness Committee. And one of its tasks was to create recommendations to improve the well-being of agriculture and food processing workers. So that committee met numerous times and continues to meet. And they came up with 13 recommendations that are in a report that was submitted to the governor in December of 2021. And this bill relates to one of the recommendations from that report.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Senator Dornick.
Follow up, Madam Chair? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gross. So how many members are on this group? And it was unanimous, the vote, I think you said. So I was just wondering the number.
I'm not quite sure of the number off the top of my head. I believe it's 12 to 15, but I could get that information. And the vote was unanimous for the members that were present during the meeting that took place in November of 2021.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you said there was some members present. Do you know who, I'm sorry, absent? Do you know who was absent? I just wanted to see who the stakeholders that were there.
Sure.
And that weren't there.
Thank you, Senator.
So the final vote was on November 22nd of 2021. Absent committee members for that particular meeting were the Department of Agriculture, Minnesota Farm Bureau, Minnesota Farmers Union, and Minnesota Agri-Growth Council.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Senator Dornick, follow up.
Follow up, thank you. So give me right, you said the Commissioner of Department of Agriculture and then a Farm Bureau, is that correct? And then Farmers Union, correct? And Agri-Growth, so those are all farming. So I'm just wondering, did they ever get back to see, do they support this or where are they on this?
Thank you,
Since they weren't there, I don't know if that was the weather problem or whatever, but I'm just curious to, were they able to speak to this?
Thank you, Senators. Ms. Gross.
So I do know that the committee sent out drafts of the report to all members in advance so that they had an opportunity to provide feedback. And during committee meetings, as well as through that feedback process, there wasn't feedback that was provided that didn't support the recommendations. And in more recent meetings, I guess just speaking as a member of that committee, in more recent meetings, I believe the member from Minnesota Agri-Growth Council has been present. However, I'm not sure about the other members from the other entities.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. So I guess I have talked to some of these individuals, and they're not necessarily against it. They feel like some of it's redundant, but they have some concerns. But again, it's just that communication with all parties, and that's what I've said continuously in this committee is just really wanting to partnership with labor and management, always. That's so important, the communication there. So that's always my goal. So thank you for your work. I do have another question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Dornick.
So in the definition, that'd be in page 2 of the bill, subdivision 1. So my question is, it talks about in the meat packing or poultry processing industry. So very broad definition. Do we have a number? Is this large meat packers we're trying to address? Is this small or just everyone? Just the scope that we're trying to, target, I guess.
Thank you, Senator. And is that question to?
Let's either Senator Kunesh or Ms. Gross, whichever one.
Okay, thank you.
So basically the definition of employer employing meatpacking or poultry processing, those in the meatpacking or poultry processing industry would include any sized employer that employs in the meatpacking or poultry processing industry. In terms of a number, I believe in our fiscal note, DLI estimates that there are approximately 17,400 meatpacking and poultry processing workers in the state.
Go ahead, Senator Dornick. Thank you. Yeah, please go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, I'll thank you very much for the answer. That'll be it for now. I have maybe one or two later, but I'm going to let other members speak.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Dornick. Further discussion? Yes, Senator Grunhagen. Senator Liskey, I believe, no, Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say, I think when you look at the nature of the work and the difficulty of the work, I think what Mr. Hess pointed out, both for the safety of the workers and also for the food safety that we eat, I think this is a really important thing. And again, I wasn't aware of the governor's task force and so on, but I'm glad you did bring everyone together, and I think that this is a very reasonable bill to make sure people know their rights and that they have the ability to address them, because when we hear some of the work situations, again, during COVID, we were hearing some terrible ones in some of the meatpacking places and so on, and I think this is a good step forward to help make the places safer for everyone involved.
Thank you, Senator Marty. And before we go to the next comment, I just wanted to make sure that members, you saw that in your packets, there are also some letters from the United Food and Commercial Workers. Also, there's a written statement, and then also from Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid, and then there's also a fiscal note if people want to have any questions or comments about that. But I believe next on the list is Senator Grunhagen.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I was just looking at the fiscal note, and it looks like we're appropriating $168,000 from the general fund in fiscal year '24, $126,000 thereafter from the general fund. And when I look at the fiscal note, it says the department anticipates, under assumptions, 12 complaints a year. 50% of them will require 10 hours, they estimate, and the other 50% would require 20 hours. So is there any way to have a report back that this money's actually needed, since we're just updating and that the department can't accommodate this bill with its current budget? I guess that would be for the commissioner.
Thank you, Senator Grunhagen. Ms. Gross? Or if there is anybody else who wants to speak to that, please feel free.
I know that, for example, in relation to some other laws that we have authority over, we do provide a report on the work we have conducted in relation to enforcement activity under a particular law. One example would be we submit a report every year in relation to the Women's Economic Security Act.
Thank you. Follow-up, Senator Grunhagen?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so within this bill, and I haven't a chance to read it completely through, but is there a requirement that we as the legislature find out what the actual cost and complaints are in relationship to what the assumptions are here? Commissioner.
Ms. Gross, is there?
No, that's not within the language of the bill.
Thank you.
Oh, she's not, okay. I just got a little
Any-
whisper in my ear over here.
Do you have any follow-up, Senator?
Yeah, I would just say that's something that I would like to see in the bill going forward, is just a little bit of a oversight and accountability. So many times we, having been in the House for 10 years, so many times we pass laws without a sunset or accountability back to the legislature, and they're just on automatic pilot. And I just think, regardless of whether you're which side of the aisle or whatever, that the elected representatives should have some oversight on that. So just a suggestion for the author to consider.
Thank you, Senator Grunhagen. If there's any follow-up that anybody has to that line of questioning, please feel free to offer it. Is there any other discussion? Yes, Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Chair. So what we're trying to do is make sure that everybody gets, I guess one question would be, we're trying to make sure everybody gets explained in their language what they're required to do at work, correct?
Thank you, Senator Grunhagen. If anyone wants to.
Yes, it's their, so that they are fully informed about the work that they're doing, and then any of the employment options that come around.
Okay,
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, which I agree with. If there's a language barrier, we need to make sure they fully understand in their language what's happening. So that seems like a main part of the bill. Besides changing language and things, I guess I'm just wondering where all this money goes to, because it seems like we have Google Translate and things like that. If we have it in English, we can do that, and then shouldn't we be able to push print and they can see what it is in their language?
Thank you, Senator Wiesenberg. Could anybody speak to just and I want to just make sure we're all clear. My understanding is this is not an appropriation. This fiscal note reflects the cost to the department of enforcing to make sure that these that the bill is carried out. So it's the amount of money that would be used already with the department budget. But does anybody, perhaps Ms. Gross, care to speak to that comment and question, just understanding what it takes to realize the requirements of this bill? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Under this bill, it will provide DLI with enforcement authority over two statutes it currently doesn't have enforcement authority over. So currently, the Packing House Worker Bill of Rights doesn't have an enforcement mechanism. This bill would include a new enforcement mechanism that includes enforcement authority by DLI. Additionally, DLI currently doesn't have enforcement authority over the migrant labor law. So this bill would allow DLI to enforce that law, which it currently does not do. So enforcement of these two additional laws would take additional resources.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Senator Riesenberg.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess I would ask, have there been violations in the past? Have we had violations? And what has that cost the department to look into these violations?
Thank you, Senator Riesenberg. Ms. Gross?
Because we don't have enforcement authority over those laws, we don't have data regarding violations.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Senator, any follow-up?
Yeah, so I just want to, so we haven't had there has not been any recorded violations. Obviously, we haven't passed this yet, is what I'm seeing, but I just want to make sure that, so is this, we're going to be hiring more employees, I'm guessing, is what this money's going for then?
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Gross?
Yes, the fiscal note reflects hiring of an additional full-time investigator.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Senator Riesenberg?
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to call this letter to the attention of the Committee from Legal Aid. Though we don't have data, we have anecdotal information from legal aid staff attorneys who represent agricultural workers. They have heard concerns from workers related to potential violations. So I think that it would be helpful that we have some investigating authority by the department so that we can really find out how many violations there are, et cetera. So I think the fiscal note is just really a guess at this point, and we can decide if we think the Department of Labor should get more appropriations, or if we just decide you have to manage it within your existing appropriations.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Any further comments on that line of discussion? Okay, Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to do some closing thoughts. I don't really have another question. We're all for safety. It was Bernie, right? Yes. So you're Meatpacking Union, so I just wanted to address you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for you guys working. And again, I was a union guy. Well, no, I'm not anymore, but I was a union guy too. So appreciate the hard work that is being done. And we thank you for that and your members, all of them. So if you would relay that back to them, we appreciate that. We're all looking for safety. We're looking for that sweet spot of labor and management, because most businesses do a great job. There's just some that sometimes it's disappointing for the guys that are doing, or the businesses that are doing it right. So always want to be mindful of that and acknowledge that we do appreciate the hard work and people that are working in those tough jobs. So thank you for that. I think in closing, just that as I talk to stakeholders, like I mentioned, just having that involvement and listening and hearing a lot of these, the ones I talk to, that they're doing most of it or all of it, but every once in a while something, and they miss something. And so I would just caution on the fines a little bit. I think you do that. I think the commissioner, when she was here, just talked about that I think you guys do a great job of looking at the repetitiveness of it and taking that into account. So just appreciate the work you do, and that you continue to work with both sides and get to a common ground. And we need each other. We need labor. We need businesses, and to be careful not to step and make it a little too uneven. So thank you, Senator Kunesh, too, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Dornick. Senator Riesenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to make sure I have this correct, so would this also, it's talking about migrant workers, would this be also like picking potatoes and sugar beets and those things, or is this just meat packing?
Thank you, Senator Riesenberg. Our panel, any of you perhaps might be able to answer that question. Please feel free.
Sure. I think this bill is specifically for our meat packers and poultry workers.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any further discussion? I just want to take off my chair hat for a moment before I turn this over to Senator Kunesh for the last word. I also would echo my colleague Senator Dornick's comments of thanks. Thank you to the workers who have asked for what I would describe as just very, very basic rights in their workplace, to know what the safety standards are, to know what their rights are. It's shocking, frankly, that these rights aren't already in our law. And I just want to just acknowledge that this group of laborers and workers, men and women, doing this work are some of the most exploited laborers and workers in our nation and in our state. So I thank you, Senator Kunesh, and advocates for bringing this forward, and I'm proud to support it and glad that we have bipartisan support as well. So thank you very much. And with that, I will pass it over to you, Senator Kunesh, for the last word.
Well, thank you, members, and thank you for listening and your very good questions and thoughtfulness in this. It's really important to remember that that the meat packing and poultry business in Minnesota has high turnover, employee turnover, and we know that we have depended on migrant workers for years and years to do the work that many of us would not choose to do. And I think it's only fair, I think it's only humane that we ensure that they have what I consider right here some minimal rights. And when we talk about fines, unfortunately, not every company will do the right thing, and oftentimes when it hits their pocketbook is when they'll start making those adjustments. So with that, I would thank all of you for listening and ask for your support for Senate File 61.
Thank you very much, Senator Kunesh. And Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the bill as amended, I believe, and
Yes.
referred to finance next, or
Judiciary and Public Safety, I believe, is the next stop for the bill.
so moved.
Thank you very much. Senator Marty has moved that Senate File 61 as amended be recommended to pass and re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Senate File 61 as amended passes. Thank you very much, members. Thank you, Senator Kunesh and testifiers. All right. Next on our agenda this afternoon is Senate File 303. And one of our Labor Committee members, Senator Kupec, is the lead author and is going to go up to the testifiers table. It's nice to see you on the other side there of the table, Senator Kupec.
A little different being on this side of the table.
It is, it is.
Who I need to sign into?
I think we got you.
Okay.
And unless someone tells me differently. All right, and Senator Kupec, I understand that you have an author's amendment for Senate File 303.
I do. The author's amendment is just clarifying a few of the open meeting laws, would let personnel matters be discussed in private, similar to what a city council does when they go into an executive session. Some of these matters would not be things maybe that should be discussed in public. And there is also an increase to the budget from $500,000 to $750,000.
Thank you, Senator Kupec. So we have the A2 amendment that Senator Kupec would like to add to the bill. Do we have a motion to adopt the A2 amendment? So moved. Okay, we do have a motion. Thank you, Senator House-Child and Senator Umer-Verbetten. All in favor of adopting the A2 amendment onto Senate File 303, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The A2 amendment is adopted. Senator Kupec, to your bill.
Sure. Thank you. Madam Chair. So PERB, or the Public Employees Relation Board, was set up in 2014 in a bill authored by Senator Pappas. It was as a way to resolve labor disputes in the public sector more quickly and in a way that would cost less than going to court. It was given a budget originally of $125,000. That was originally seen kind of as a set-up budget. And so it has never actually been fully funded. It's just gotten that $125,000 each year. So for the most part, it has not been able to do its job. It did briefly run for about a year after they had saved up enough money to basically run it for a year. During that time, it did hear 31 cases. It issued 10 complaints. 3 of them went to hearings. 7 of them were settled, and then the remainder of them were withdrawn, dismissed, or sent to arbitration. So in that time frame, it did save those municipalities and those employees from having to weigh the cost of going to court, which at times, certainly for municipalities and for workers, can be very expensive. When you have to sit and take depositions from lawyers, those expenses can rack up fairly quickly. So this is a way for both employers and public cities, towns, municipalities, and the state to save some money. PERB functions similar to the National Labor Relations Acts, and it'll save, again, money for both employees and the government by not going to court and avoiding those lawyer fees. So an outcome can also be reached sooner by both parties, and then we can move the dispute on a little bit faster. Meg Luger is here. She has been overseeing PERB. We heard from her last week or a couple of weeks ago about that, and so she has a little bit more information for us.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, no, not at all. Please, we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair McEwen and committee, and thank you, Senator Kupec, for carrying this. We're very grateful. And I was with you just a little while ago, so I'll be careful not to overcover. And I'll start by talking about the funding requests, and then we can walk through the changes at the beginning of the bill as folks see necessary. As Senator Kupec said, we have been operating on a shoestring budget. Actually, we didn't operate last year at all because we were put back into stasis. And we have, when we did operate, we had a 0.3 executive director, and that was the only staff that we had. And so that made processing charges, conducting investigations, interfacing with parties very difficult. And actually, the board members ended up doing a lot of the work that typically board members would just be undertaking a deliberative process, but we ended up doing a lot of drafting. And most of us have other full-time jobs, so that made it really hard for us to do it as quickly as we would have hoped. And so we are hoping to have the following positions, and this is the basis for our request. We would like to have a full-time executive director to ensure that the operations of the organization are, consistent with the goals of the statute. A full-time investigator who can move through those fact-finding processes, getting information from the parties just as quickly as possible, and then an administrative support individual who can, they're critical. We can't really live without them. So having an individual who can kind of help keep the place operating at a basic level is really important. And as I noted last week, M&B has been very clear with us that funding needs to be in place before we can hire anyone. And if this bill doesn't pass as it's currently drafted, will go into effect on July 1st with the same kind of set of resources that we had before, except now we're going to have to string out over an actual whole biennium. So I'm really hoping that this enables us to continue to process things efficiently. I think we did the best we could under the circumstances, but as we go along, we're going to gather more data about the amount of business that we're going to be doing, the number of cases that we're going to be hearing, and that, that's going to be refined over time. I'm sorry, I think there's 2 things I left off my list of things that we have to pay for. That is IT services, critical for our public-facing work so that individuals know what we're doing. And then secondly, when our cases go to hearing, when we issue a complaint and they go to hearing, a hearing officer has to hear that. And those individuals also expect to be paid for their time. And so we respect that and want to make sure that that happens. So with the chair's permission, I'll talk a little bit about the data pieces, if that's okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so just to, these are, from our perspective, first of all, these are changes that have been sort of kicking around in amendment or bill form for a number of years, and they are really intended to try to conform the operations of the PERB to our other administrative fact-finding agencies like OAH or like our boards that undertake licensing investigations. So first of all, we want to ensure that when we have data that's private data, it doesn't simply become public because it's in our hands. On the other hand, we do have specific categories of data that are public so that individuals have a real-time understanding of the work that's being done. Secondly, we'd like to be able to conduct our deliberative processes in closed session, which other boards have the ability to do. As somebody who practices before those boards, I'm pretty familiar with getting put in a waiting room with a noise-canceling machine or the radio turned up. And this is really just for the deliberative piece. Obviously, our complaints are public, the outcomes of the cases are public, but we really, like a court of appeals or like the Office of Administrative Hearings, would believe that our best thinking is done when we can speak freely and candidly amongst each other. And so these changes would make that more possible than the way we're working right now. So if there are questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lugar-Nicolai. And with that, we will go ahead and have any questions or discussion. Yes, Senator Liskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand what we're trying to aim for here, Madam Chair. I was curious to see the breakdown, the actual breakdown. We saw numbers go from 500,000 already amended to 750,000. It sounds like we're hiring 3 employees. We need some IT stuff, things like that, but it doesn't really help understand the full funding portion. So I was hoping maybe we can get an actual line item description.
Thank you, Senator Liskey. Ms. Lugar-Nicolai or Senator Kupec, either.
Okay. Madam Chair and Senator Liskey, thanks for your question. So one piece that is still in flux for us is, and actually at 2 o'clock, I'm having a conversation with MMB about this, how much these individuals get paid is going to be in some ways tied to our position description. What we know right now is that the cost bands are going to probably be, with benefits, you know what? I'm going to not actually take a flyer on this in my testimony, but can I commit to getting you that information as soon as we have it from MMB? Yeah.
Senator Liskey?
That would be appreciated, just so we can see what's going on.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Liskey. Any follow-up?
Can I add one quick thing, which Senator Liskey, again, I appreciate the concern and question. One thing to keep in mind is that 525 number is from 2014, and so we're trying to guesstimate at this point for where we're going to be now, too.
Thank you very much. Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, 2 things. One, on the budget first, fiscal note, you'll get that for the next committee? Because I assume you're going to need something in terms of what all the expenses are and what you're planning to do. That's been requested by somebody? Okay. Just to make sure, the earlier we request them, the faster they come.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Marty. And is that, I don't think we had a response on the record to that. Do you care to respond, Ms. Lugar-Nicolai?
We, to my knowledge, haven't requested a fiscal note, but we can. I mean, yeah, we're dealing, consistent with the prior bill, with sort of unknowns in terms of the data too.
I understand.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, I understand that they can't do it till they know exactly what the size scope is going to be, but I think that would be helpful, and we can make sure that happens too. On the substance of it, Senator Kupec, I think you said that in the years so they were operating were like 31 sort of cases where they do. I can see how this is a whole lot cheaper than going to court for these local governments and everyone. So a lot more efficient. But if we staff it up and do this, do we have any idea how many of these types of cases there will be in a typical year?
Thank you, Senator Marty.
But the 1 year with that 31 was in a 1 year time period, and that was just a couple of years ago. So I would imagine that would be a fairly good, that's our only sample size, I guess, we have to go on. So we went with 31. I don't know, I think lawyers get a higher pay grade than a meteorologist did. I did not, when I heard a few things about $450 an hour, I said, wow, I made a poor career choice, but certainly that will add up quickly.
Thank you, Senator Kupec. Depends on the kind of lawyer. I never made that kind of money. Any other comments or discussion? Yes, Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just checking to see the path of the bill. Other committees it's got to go to.
Thank you, Senator Dornick. My understanding is that after this committee, it will be passing on to state and local government and veterans. Are stops after that, Senator?
And judiciary also.
Okay, very good. Senator Dornick, any follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So since we don't know the fiscal note, and can we have it come back to this committee to when you get the fiscal note?
Thank you, Senator Dornick. I do not have an objection to that as the chair, but I would like to find out if Senator Kupec has an opinion on that.
I don't think I'd have an objection with it coming back with a fiscal note. Sure.
Thank you. Yes, I believe it will come back to our committee and will be part of our budget, is my understanding at this point, Senator Dornick. And if that changes, I will definitely be in communication with you about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Kupec.
Thank you.
All right. Anything further, Senator? Do you have something? Okay, Senator Gruenhagen or Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chair, I think this is kind of an ongoing issue. Senator Marty just had a question for you about, in this kind of process where we're trying to be more pure about not putting language into appropriation bills. I mean, are you still in the decision-making process about whether bills are going to go on their own to the floor in terms of the policy issues, and then the money will stay with the committee when Senator McEwen puts together her budget?
Madam
Or what's the process?
Thank you, Senator Pappas.
Senator Pappas, we're trying to recognize that some bills are obviously pure policy. This one is a lot of funding and more funding, I think, than policy, much more. But no, it's up to the committee chairs then if these budget things are to travel on their own or in their omnibus bills, because this is basically an appropriation with the expectation these things are going to happen as a result of it. So
Well, Mr. Chairman, it does affect data privacy and then
Right.
the open meeting law. Those are the policy provisions.
Madam Chair, there are policy provisions, but it's in the substance of this bill is to have the Public Employee Labor Relations Board work and function and operate and giving them a budget so they're not in hibernation.
Thank you.
And so again, it's kind of up to the chair if she intends to have this as part of her omnibus bill or as Carrie traveled it on its own. And I think she sort of just indicated a minute ago she's expecting it to be back in her bill.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Pappas, did you have anything further on that? Okay, Senator Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think you said that there were like 30 cases or 31 cases or what, something like that. And I actually like the idea, try to keep it out of court. Nothing against lawyers, but if you can avoid that, it's my experience is it's probably positive. So can you give an example to the committee of a couple cases that were handled and how it was resolved?
Thank you, Senator Gruenhagen. If either of you care to address that, thank you.
Chair McEwen, Senator Gruenhagen. I can give you a few examples. So first of all, one thing that's helpful perhaps for the committee to know is that if a case comes to us and doesn't have a basis in fact or law to support that the violations occurred, one of two things happen. We ask the parties if they wish to withdraw the charge or we dismiss the charge. So many cases were resolved that way. We were able to efficiently determine that there wasn't a basis. And then they were if you saw that a case was withdrawn, that's typically what happened. If a case went to hearing, it followed the following path. The charge came to us, and I think a good example would be probably one of the cases that did go all the way to a completed hearing, and that was a case on a refusal to provide information about a fringe benefit. And there was a dispute about whether or not that information had to be provided. The PERB determined preliminarily that it did, and therefore the failure to turn the information over did violate PELRA, particularly subdivision 5 of subdivision 2, subparagraph 5 of 179A.13. And so we issued a complaint that briefly stated what the problem was and the fact that the information had been requested and that request had been refused. And then we assigned the case to a hearing officer. That individual conducted an evidentiary hearing. So the parties gave us information preliminarily so that we could try to understand the scope of the problem. But then they had an actual hearing with, individuals who could testify under oath in a proceeding in which a record was maintained. And that included a record of the testimony as well as a record of the, exhibits that were presented as factual information, and then an issue that hearing officer issued a decision, and that decision, was the law of the case, and then a party appealed it to us, and then we heard oral argument about that case, and then we issued a decision ultimately affirming the hearing officer's their original determination. So that is the sort of typical path of a case. Among the other types of cases that we heard were, there were a couple cases in which there was discipline that was alleged to be related to union activity. There were a couple of cases in which, there was at least one case in which there was a directive given to not discuss matters, which was viewed as interfering with individuals' ability to consult their union representatives. So those are the kind of a little sampling of what we heard, if that's helpful.
Thank you. Senator Gruenhagen, do you have any follow-up? Okay, very good. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on Senate File 303 as amended? Yes, Senator Pappas.
Madam Chair, I would like to move that Senate File 303 be recommended, as amended, be recommended to pass and re-referred to the Committee on State and Local Government.
Thank you very much, Senator Pappas. The motion has been made. All in favor, any last minute? I don't see any. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Senate File 303 as amended passes. And is re-referred to the Committee on State and Local Government and Veterans. With that, we have no further business this afternoon, and we're going to finish a little bit early and give people a little time back in their afternoon. Thank you very much, members, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. The Senate Labor Committee is adjourned.